Well, we can take a deep breath. Not that everything is fixed for the Detroit Tigers, but we can take a deep breath and realize, okay, it's starting to come back a little bit to normal. Now, you may not feel like a win over Arizona is worthy of such a reaction, but it's how you play the game, right? It's what you've noticed that was lacking that you're starting to pick up again. And some extra base power is exactly that. Welcome, everybody, to X's and Bros throughout the great state of Michigan. I'm Matt Shepard. John Ilk is our producer today. Good to have John on board. Tigers find their extra base power. They roll the Diamondbacks 5-1. Andy Ibanez, who was just called up. Andy Ibanez goes 2 for 4 with a homer and double. Dylan Dingler goes 3 for 4 with a homer and 2 runs scored. And they make a winner out of Troy Melton, his first in the majors. He tossed 7 scoreless innings, striking out 5, scattering just 5 hits. And the Tigers get the much-needed win with Casey Mize throwing in Game 2 tonight. The big story really is the trade. And how you feel about the trade remains to be seen, because oftentimes we want big names. I mean, that's just a fact. It's true. We want big names. Tigers have traded 19-year-old prospect Enrique Jimenez to the Twins. They get Chris Paddock and Randy Dobnak in exchange. One's a starter. One's a reliever who used to be a starter and was a great story because he played in Utica with the, it's not even a minor league team. Okay, it's an independent league team. But he's been in AAA all year except for one game. Okay, he's been in AAA the last couple of years. I mean, he has not found the form that made him such a really good story. This story is more about Paddock, the starter. Okay, and he's expected to make his Tigers debut on Wednesday against Arizona. He's 3-9 with an ERA of 4.95 in 21 starts for the Twins this year. It doesn't move my needle at all. I've been wrong before on plenty, okay? I was wrong about Gleyber Torres. I think I've been right about Alex Cobb so far, but in fairness to Alex Cobb, he hasn't pitched. But I think with Chris Paddock, this is a situation where if it was the Chris Paddock from San Diego, you and I would love this. We would. I mean, double-digit wins with the Padres. Of course, that was or close to double-digit wins in 2019 when he was a rookie. 140 innings with the Padres that season, an ERA of 3.3 with the Padres, and 153 strikeouts in 140 innings. That was strikeout stuff. That was what this team needed. Okay. Since that time, he's had one winning season, and that was last year, and he was 5-3 in 17 starts. He's never started a full year. He's never boasted 32, 33 starts. Okay. But is that really what you need out of him? Not necessarily. He's going to be a back end rotation guy. So you will have Skubal and Flaherty and Mize, Melton, Montero, Paddock. You go into playoff series with that pitching lineup, and you don't even need all 6 of those guys, okay? But if you go into that, how good do you feel? Doesn't matter how I feel. Doesn't matter really how you feel. It matters how the Tigers feel. What is the sense you're getting? They needed, I thought, a top-end rotation arm. They didn't get it. Doesn't mean they're done, okay? They have 2 more days. Thursday, 4 o'clock. That's the trade deadline. Can they do it? Sure, they can do it. Will they do it? I don't know. With a story like this, Scott Harris says, we like his swing and miss. Okay. He's got 83 strikeouts in 111 innings this year. Okay. So when you've got a strikeout per 9 at 6.7, which happens to be among the lowest, it's the lowest in his career, then that's a problem. I don't know where he sees the swing and miss. I mean, in his career, he's had some, but for his career, His strikeout per nine is 8.4, which again isn't bad. It's a little skewed by his first couple of years and really skewed actually by his 2023 season, but he only had 2 games. So it's really, you could throw that out the window. I don't buy that at all. You pitch 5 innings, you have 8 strikeouts. There's your 14.4 strikeouts per nine. Throw that year away. Doesn't matter. Okay. It's all the other ones. And he's not, excuse me, he's not a strikeout pitcher. And I think that's something that they needed. They need it from their back end. They need it from their back end bullpen, and I think they needed it from a starting rotation type of guy. They would probably tell you we just need outs. What they accomplished here is they get a back end rotation and they get a guy who's got some major league experience and might be called up. He's not going to get called up unless an injury takes place or somebody craps the bed. He's not going to get called up. Understand this. Randy Dobnak has a 7 ERA in AAA. Sometimes things can change. Sometimes guys get a little disappointed, depressed, borderline in AAA, and they don't like what they're doing. Let me ask you this. Who would you rather have, him or some of the Tigers farmhands down there in AAA? I'd rather have the Tiger farmhand than a guy like that. We'll get into that with you here on X's and Bros throughout the morning. Phone number is 866-838-4843. Text line is sports radio to 21,000. Sad news for sure. Cubs Hall of Famer second baseman Ryne Sandberg has died. He was the National League MVP in 1984. He was a 10-time All-Star. He was a 9-time Gold Glove. He was a 7-time Silver Slugger. Ryne Sandberg was, as I mentioned, the MVP in 1984, and he was just 65 years young. Died of cancer. I thought he was a hell of a player. Really enjoyed watching him play. I thought he went about his business as a pro's pro. All right. Handled himself wonderfully. Every time I hear Ryne Sandberg, though, I cannot help think of Lou Whitaker. I know. And that's probably not fair to Ryne Sandberg, but I can't help it because they played in the same era. Okay. They were among the 2 best second basemen of all time. I think Lou Whitaker's a top 10 second baseman of all time. Ryne Sandberg is too. Just because 2 guys played in the same era and just because the same 2 guys are really good players doesn't mean one of them is really good and the other one stinks. Doesn't mean you have to degrade the one guy so the guy you really liked, you uptick. That's not fair. But there are some numbers that I think you might find interesting. We're going to take a quick timeout. We're brought to you by MitchLyonsWealth.com. This is X's and Bros throughout the great state of Michigan on the Michigan Sports Network. AJ Hinch, after the game last night, his team a 5-1 winner over Arizona. Welcome back, X's and Bros, Monday through Friday, 6 until 9. Here throughout the great state of Michigan, the Meyer hotline, 866-838-4843. The text line, Sports Radio to 21,000. It's a big story, no question. The trade for Chris Paddock and Randy Dobnak. How big it is, baseball world-wise, it's not real big. Detroit-wise, it's big. It's big because people have wanted Scott Harris to make a move. Doubt that's the move they really wanted. Doesn't mean he's done. He's addressed part of the issue. Let's see what they do moving forward. But and we'll get to that. We'll get to that at 6:35. What I wanted to talk about briefly was the Ryne Sandberg situation, the fact that he passed. And as I mentioned before, just because you're comparing two players, and one you loved, for me, Lou Whitaker, and one you saw plenty, but felt like at times he was a little overrated, probably later in his career. During his peak, he was the best second baseman in baseball. I can admit that. I think he's a Hall of Famer. He is, but I would have voted for him if I had a vote. There's a few things that you wonder about if you're a Detroiter. Like Ryne Sandberg on his first Hall of Fame vote got 50%. Lou Whitaker got less than 5%. To me, that makes no sense. None. I've said this for decades now on how Lou Whitaker should be in the Hall of Fame. And I truly believe this. It sure doesn't help. It did not help his case on how the Tigers handled things either. Okay. When you're one of the best in franchise history, and he's one of the best players in franchise history, and he is probably the second best second baseman in franchise history. Charlie Gehringer's better. Anyway, there are certain moments that probably didn't help him. You know, they built a statue for Ryne Sandberg. And I've said this since Whitaker and Trammell retired. The two of them should have a statue out there. The double play combination of Alan Trammell and Lou Whitaker should be in a statue out there. Like the next statue is probably going to be Miguel Cabrera. And if you don't want to spend the money, you should have started with the great players that they have now, in Greenberg and Newhouser and Gehringer and Kaline and Horton, and Cobb. All worthy. I would argue Lou Whitaker, Alan Trammell, Miguel Cabrera, Justin Verlander, those guys should all be out there. Like Cabrera, there's too many times where we use this as a moment of, hey, here's a way to market a game. Let's have the Cabrera celebration on a Saturday against a team that we usually don't get a lot of attendance. Bring in the Athletics, and let's have Miguel Cabrera have a statue erected for him and give him a chance to say something. That way people will show up. That's the game they want to be at. You know what I mean? It should be done pretty quick. And you could argue probably should have been done by now. But Trammell and Whitaker should have been done a long time ago. Like when Comerica Park opened up, I would argue. That's just my belief. Okay? There's some things that didn't help him, I'm sure. Why this would matter in a Hall of Fame vote, I don't know, but you never know that there was a dispute in 1995, a labor dispute for Major League Baseball, and Ryne Sandberg was able to get some endorsements out of it. Didn't say much about the lockout, but was able to pick up some endorsements. Lou Whitaker said some things about baseball and the relationship between the players and its owners. And when they had a union meeting, he showed up in a stretch limo. Doesn't look great. If I'm going to rip Patrick Ewing saying that I got to feed my kids too, and you're making millions and millions of dollars during an NBA strike, then I've got to be able to point that finger at one of my favorite players. So that's one incident. It's not a huge deal, but it probably didn't sit well with a lot of people. Dallas Green, one of the managers Ryne Sandberg played for, once said, there could be one day I think he's the best player in the National League. The next day, I think he's the best player I've ever seen. Sparky Anderson, maybe taken out of context here, but a quote associated with Sparky Anderson is Lou Whitaker, if he puts his mind to it and works hard, should win a batting title. You see how things are taken in different light there? Yeah. Of course, Ryne Sandberg was seen on WGN for the entire country to see on a regular basis. How often were the Tigers on national TV? Not a lot. In fairness to Sandberg, he was in the top 5 in the MVP race 3 times. Got to be pretty damn good to do that. He's in the conversation as a top 5 second baseman all time. Lou Whitaker is probably not. And this is why I reiterate. This is not about saying one guy doesn't belong there and the other guy does. It's saying that both do. It's saying also guys are measured against current players or certain players. Trammell was measured against certain guys. Whitaker was measured against certain guys. And Whitaker was never in the top 5 for MVP. In fact, the highest he ever rated was 1983. Detroit had a great season. They really did. And he had arguably his best. He finished 8th that year. Cal Ripken Jr. won it. Lance Parrish actually finished 9th. So there's your deal right there. Now, we can go deeper if we want to. We can look at the socioeconomics of the situation, the fact that Sandberg at one point became the highest paid player in the game. Whitaker had signed a long-term deal with the Tigers that probably got him underpaid. Whitaker seemed to be almost satisfied with being a table setter. Dude had a lot of power, could have had more, could have, if that's what was asked of him, maybe. Shouldn't take away the fact of how much, he had better range than Ryne Sandberg. He has a higher wins above replacement than Ryne Sandberg. Now, does that make him better? No. You could use that as part of your argument, I believe, on why he's in the same conversation. But when you look at homers and you look at RBIs and you look at stolen bases and you look at other key numbers, number of hits, then you're going to side with Sandberg. That's the reality of it. There are certain numbers that turn your head. When you get to a certain number of homers or RBIs or hits or whatever the case may be, 200 hits is a lot of hits. Lou Whitaker had 200 hits once in his career in the aforementioned 1983 season. It's a hell of a season. 200 hits a lot, right? Ryne Sandberg for 200 hits. He did it once in his career, and that was 1984, and he had 200 on the dot, but he led the league in WAR that year. He led the league in runs. He led the league in triples. He was a Gold Glove and Silver Slugger that season. So if you wanted to nitpick, Lou Whitaker played longer. If that means something to you. So for whatever reason, people felt like Lou Whitaker didn't do enough. Certain numbers didn't grab you. Home runs, Sandberg's got the edge. There's a lot of different things that they use towards Sandberg. I can't help it, and it's sad that we've lost another one. We lost Dave Parker earlier this year. Now we lose Ryne Sandberg. It's sad that it has come down to, trying to use your guy compared to somebody else's guy. Now that guy is gone. He'll be missed. He was a class act. He's a deserved Hall of Famer. But Lou Whitaker is a deserved Hall of Famer as well. When we come back, Tigers trades. How does that move your needle? Chris Paddock and Randy Dobnak. That's next on X's and Bros, brought to you by MitchLionsWealth.com. 35 after the hour. Welcome back, X's and Bros. We're brought to you by MitchLionsWealth.com. Appreciate John Ilkwart warming up with us here on a Tuesday morning. It's a Tullymore Tuesday, by the way. Check out Tullymore Golf and do that as soon as you can. You don't want the summer to get away from you. Go to TullymoreGolf.com. That's where you can get reservations for elite golf in the state of Michigan. We've got a lot of great courses. We do. And it's an honor to be able to play so many of them. But if you don't play Tullymore and St. Ives, you've missed out. So get there as soon as you can, because it's not just the golf, it's the entire experience. The golf is championship golf. But the people who help you get things set up there, from the young men who pull in the carts out of the cart shack and get them all set up early in the morning, to the folks who wait on you after your round. They're all genuine, good people and great at what they do. Just to put a wrap on the Whitaker and Sandberg thing. So if you were wondering, Sandberg had the edge in homers. He's got the edge in hits, but not by much. We're talking about 17 more hits than Whitaker. It's basically a wash. Whitaker has the edge in RBIs by 23, so pretty much a wash there. Whitaker has the edge in runs scored. So back then, those were the key statistics. I don't know how much they looked at WAR back then. And if they did, Whitaker has the edge there, 75 WAR to Sandberg's 67.9. Okay? Silver Sluggers, this is where it gets lopsided. Silver Sluggers, Sandberg 7, Whitaker 4. MVPs, I've already mentioned. 1 for Sandberg, none for Whitaker. All-Star games, 10 for Sandberg, 5 for Whitaker. Gold Gloves, 9 for Sandberg, 3 for Whitaker. Had to deal with Frank White. Pretty damn good second baseman. Not making excuses. Again, I've said, I think Ryan Sandberg's a Hall of Famer. I think two things can be true. Sandberg can be a Hall of Famer. Lou Whitaker can be underrated and should be in the Hall of Fame if you look at the numbers. And those numbers are important. So again, as I mentioned before, there are certain players you compare other players to. That's the facts of sports. Everybody's compared to Michael Jordan. It's not fair to compare Jalen Duren to him. But would you want him to be Tim Duncan since they play the same position? You know what I mean? Quarterback-wise, people were compared to Johnny Unitas and Bart Starr and Terry Bradshaw and Joe Montana and John Elway and Dan Marino and now Peyton Manning and Tom Brady, Patrick Mahomes. Those are the elite players at those positions. What do? You take other young players, fair or unfair, and I think it's unfair oftentimes, until they've played a little bit, and compare those players to them. And you don't even have to do it from a national standpoint. Do it from a local standpoint. Mindset. Most of you want your young players to grow together. Bring them up from the minor leagues, share a bond, homegrown talent. Not the entire roster, but the core of the team. Why is that? Because you either witnessed, felt, or read about 1984, and they did the same thing. That's kind of what it is. So I think that's the reason why so many people have that philosophy or that strong belief. And you've seen it with some of the other championship teams. Okay? You're seeing it with the Lions. What do you love most about the Lions? The winning, the toughness, the grit, the attitude, the togetherness, the professionalism. You also love the fact that most of them, if not all of them, outside, Anzalone and DJ Reed this year and a few other guys, Ray Lopez for crying out loud, are homegrown talent. Your entire offensive line is homegrown. All your offensive players outside of Jared Goff and David Montgomery are homegrown. On the defensive side of the ball, you love it when Aleem McNeil is healthy, Aiden Hutchinson, you got Tyleek Williams this year. Jack Campbell's come into his own. You're hoping for Terrion Arnold. Your safeties, most of the guys are homegrown. You've drafted them. You've developed them. You've put in the hard work. You emotionally, as a fan, have put into it. You love that about this team. I get it. Me too. Sometimes the difference is, that one guy added to a team to help make them better, who may not be homegrown. Okay? The Red Wings needed a certain guy, and they got it in Brendan Shanahan. The Pistons needed a certain couple of guys, which is kind of unique because the Pistons starting lineup in their last championship team, only one was homegrown. Billups wasn't. Hamilton wasn't. Ben Wallace wasn't. Corliss Williamson wasn't. Tayshaun Prince was. Rasheed Wallace wasn't. And we embraced them, and rightfully so. You loved them. You should. But their first championship teams, not Lambeer, not Mahorn, but Rodman and Sally and Dumars and Isaiah Thomas and guys like that, they were. So there are certain things I think people look for and makes it a little bit more enjoyable. Doesn't mean you don't root for them. Doesn't mean you don't think they can do it. Just means that, well, there's something special about this team because you've watched them perhaps struggle through some tough times. You've had to deal with some emotional problems with your team as well. That makes it all the more worthwhile when they do have success. That's why if the Lions have success this year, you are going to be, after what you've gone through the last 2 years, the emotional high at halftime in San Francisco at Levi's Stadium against the Niners, to the disappointment when they lost in the second half, compared to last year, the high of 15-2, to the crashing down, I can't believe moment against Washington. Didn't want to experience it. Team didn't want to experience it. But now, if they win this year, it makes it okay because you've had your quote-unquote growing pains. Perhaps the Tigers are in the middle of something like that right now. We'll soon find out. What did they learn from last year's experience? What have they learned from a recent stretch that saw them lose 11 of 12, 12 of 13, whatever it may be, and get heavily outscored? The offense still isn't back, but it's only been a couple of games, but they've got at least a couple of wins. And the offense was there actually in the series wrap-up against Toronto. So you and I were both, I'm sure, on the same page here. We were clamoring for a trade. You saw the Yankees go get Ryan McMahon. You saw Seattle go get Josh Naylor. You saw plenty of other teams starting to make moves. Get out in front of it, if you will. I don't care when it happens. I care more about who you're getting. You don't have to make a trade the week of the trade deadline just for me. You don't have to get it done on Monday because the Yankees pulled the trigger over the weekend. It doesn't have to be knee-jerk reaction for me. What I am hoping for is that you get difference makers. This team does need a difference maker in the starting rotation, I felt, and I think it needed a difference maker at the back end of the bullpen. They traded for Chris Paddock and Randy Dobnak for Enrique Jimenez, a 19-year-old who they gave the highest slotted international draft pick that they've had in franchise history. Paddock is 29. That's good. He's healthy. That's really good. 111 innings, second most in his big league career, which should concern you. He threw close to 141 his rookie campaign with San Diego. But he's been limited by injuries. So he's healthy now. That's great. Here's the problem. His ERA is 4.95. Perhaps you think that can be a little misleading. Then look at his whip. Walks, hits per inning pitched is a pretty good indicator. Are you missing bats? Are you keeping guys off base paths? Unfortunately for Chris Paddock, he is not. Or in 21 starts this year, his whip this season is 1.28. I'll round up. It's 1.279. It's 1.28. So how would you like to use Reese Olson as a comparative number? Because that's the guy he's taking the place of. And you think Reese Olson has been okay, right? Do you not? I would think so. Reese Olson is 1.2. Paddock is closer to 1.3. And Reese Olson's ERA was 3.15 compared to Paddock's 4.79. That's a big difference. The concern for Reese Olson, again, another year and another injury. Last year, 22 starts. This year, 13. The year before, 18 starts. Hasn't started a full year. I said before the season began, I warned people this. We think we're going to get by with 4 starters, and it doesn't happen. You probably need 9 to 10 starters during the season. You almost plan for that, all right? And I said, where are the innings going to come from? Last year, the Detroit Tigers had the fewest innings pitched by starters in all of baseball. The most innings pitched by relievers in all of baseball. Pitching chaos. Those are facts. It's not surprising that you hear that about the relief corps when you know about the starting pitching rotation. This year, they're near the bottom in starting pitching innings as well. And that's a problem. So I said last year, or I said before this season, where are the innings going to come from? I said, Jackson Job's on a monitor. He's not going to pitch many innings. If Paul Skeens pitched 130 or whatever last year, Jackson Job's not pitching more than that. Obviously, he got hurt, unfortunately, and is done for the season. I said, Reese Olson has never pitched more than 111 innings, 112 innings. 2 years ago, he pitched, or last year, I should say, he pitched 112 and a third innings. I said, how many innings do you think you're going to get out of him? You'd be lucky to get 150. Lucky. And he's going to end the regular season with 68 and 2/3 innings pitched. It is borderline now where people are starting to use the phrase injury prone with Reese Olson. I said about Casey Mize. He's thrown 150 innings, but that was back in 2021. It's 4 years ago. Missed all of 23 with an injury. Last year was not good through 102 innings with an ERA of 4.5, which, by the way, still isn't where Chris Paddock was. Last year, Casey Mize, people wanted him gone. His whip was 1.48. Oh, that was brutal. This year, his whip is 1.284, so slightly worse than what you're bringing on board with Chris Paddock. His ERA, 3.4. You can skew this any way you want. He's got 92 and 2/3 innings, 93 innings. How many more innings do you think you're going to get out of him? You're lucky if you get into the 140s. Where do the innings come from your starting rotation? As much as you and I would like to, you can't pitch Tarek Skubal every single night, unfortunately. So Chris Paddock has been healthy. That's great. He'll probably give you some innings. He's only gone 7 innings or more 3 times this year, unfortunately. And before you could say, well, that's not a big deal for the Tigers because they've got a bullpen. How do you feel? How's your confidence level with the Tigers bullpen this year? It might be at an all-time low, say for 2012 and 2013. You know what I'm talking about. You don't have confidence. When A.J. Hinch goes to the mound and brings somebody in, you don't have confidence. I don't care who it is. Used to be Tyler Holton, maybe not so much anymore. Used to be Tommy Kahnle at the beginning of the year, maybe not so much anymore. Used to be Will Vest, maybe not so much anymore. It's hard for you to find a guy that you truly believe in out of that bullpen. And I don't blame you, considering how bad their numbers are. Our phone number on the Meyer hotline, 866-838-4843. The text line is Sports Radio 21,000. There you go. That's the synopsis, I think, of the Tigers trade. was hoping for more. It is uninspiring, perhaps, with Reese Olson on the 60-day IL. You're looking at when you hit the postseason and you're looking for, let's say, 4 guys. You probably only need 3. Skubal, it's a given. People think Jack Flaherty because of his age and his experience. He's been so up and down lately. I think it's kind of scary. Okay. Nothing's a guarantee. I get that. I'm not expecting, Bob Gibson in 1968 or Mickey Lolich in that same year or Denny McClain that same year, who wasn't great in the World Series. But I would say, you're looking to strengthen that. If you went Skubal, fill in the blank, and then a guy like Jack Flaherty, followed by Casey Mize, okay. But that's not what you're doing right now. I'm not going to panic just yet. When it comes to this, knowing that you still have 2 more days, and really it's 2.5, okay? You got today, you got Wednesday, and you got half of Thursday. I'm going to try and stay calm and firmly believe that the Tigers are going to do something more than what they've done so far, that they've recognized it. A.J. Hinch said this: I don't know what comes of the rest of the year for him. I think that's what the next couple of days are for. So now with a number 5 starter, I mean, you would have felt better with Jackson Jobe, I would guess. You would have felt better with Reese Olson, I would guess. Think about this. They had Jose Urquidy. He's done for the year, Tommy John surgery. You had Sawyer Gibson-Long. He's out with neck tightness. You signed Alex Cobb. He's been out with hip inflammation for the entire season. Jackson Jobe is out with Tommy John surgery, and Reese Olson is out for the regular season with a shoulder strain. There's 5 guys. Remember, I said you need probably like 10 starters. So they've had Skubal and Mize and Olson and Flaherty and Jobe and Montero and Cobb. Well, he hasn't pitched at all. Sawyer Gibson-Long, Troy Melton, okay? And then you've used some spot starters, okay? You need at least 10 guys. Now where does Chris Paddock fit in? Skubal, Mize, Flaherty, then Paddock? He comes over as your 4? Or would you put Montero ahead of him? Would you put Melton? Melton's only made 2 starts, for crying out loud. There will be people today screaming for Troy Melton because of what he did to the Diamondbacks last night. Okay? Really impressive. 5 hits, 5 strikeouts, 7 innings. Not bad, right? Something Paddock's only done 3 times this year. They really like him. Okay? We've seen them like a lot of different guys, and they haven't necessarily always come through. I know it's a wait-and-see type situation. I just think it's really underwhelming what they did yesterday. And if this is all they do, it's going to be a massive disappointment in my eyes. Phone number on the Meyer hotline is 866-838-4843. You can text the show to Sports Radio 21,000. When we come back, we'll talk a little football with you. The Lions gearing up for their first preseason game of the season. It takes place on Thursday. Let's see how ready are they for this season. And one guy who our producer Trent Bally hates has handled something really well. We'll get to all that and more coming up on X's and Bros, brought to you by MidTorrantsWealth.com. Second hour of the program. Glad you're with us on this Tullymore Tuesday. We're brought to you this hour by our friends at Meyer. Glad you're with us on X's and BrO's throughout the great state of Michigan, wherever it is you may be listening. We're on in these great cities on these friendly affiliates. Cadillac, WKAD, the Ticket 93.7 FM. In Grand Rapids, that also serves Kalamazoo and Holland and the western side of the state on the powerful WMAX 96.1 FM, The Game. We're on in Petoskey and Charlevoix, WMBN 104.7 FM, The Ticket, Northern Michigan. In Lansing, WVFN AM 730, The Game. Good to have those folks on board. I know they're excited for college football season, as are we. And, of course, in Traverse City, WKD 93.7 FM, The Ticket as well. We also stream live on X at XB Mornings, on Facebook, and on YouTube as well. John Ilk is our producer on this Tullymore Tuesday. I don't know if you saw this. We talked a lot of baseball in the first hour, but I don't know if you saw this. Apparently, Rob Manfred is making the rounds in baseball. He's making the rounds to talk with various teams about trying to get on the same page, because there have been phrases uttered similar to this, but could be a lockout in 2 years from now. Baseball, it's amazing how a lot of people get into certain positions. Certain words will trigger people. Certain actions obviously trigger people too. But when you're telling your, lack of a better word, constituents, when you're telling the people who make up your game, who you and I go to see, nobody goes to see Rob Manfred. Nobody goes to see owners. We don't go see Chris Ilitch. Hey, there's Chris Ilitch in his box. Nobody cares. They care about Riley Green. They care about Spencer Torkelson. The only time they mention the owner is around trade deadline or if there's a dispute with one of your star players. I hope owners get that. And it's the same thing with commissioners. When commissioners or people who are part of his group start to talk about salary cap in Major League Baseball, the only major sport that doesn't have one, when they start talking about that, you're going to see people get frustrated. It's not the way you go about it. That's not how you handle business. All these guys have been successful businessmen their entire careers. You don't get to this position without it. All right, maybe some of it's handed down from dad. Who knows? But for the most part, in order to keep it afloat, in order to keep it successful, and your business, you got to be a smart dude. Why in the world would you utter those types of phrases? Salary cap, lockout, work stoppage, things of that nature. Why would you do that? You go and you meet with your constituents, your players, and you use that word, you're going to draw some ire. And reportedly, Rob Manfred was in the Philadelphia Phillies clubhouse. And there was a meeting with players sitting around, and Manfred proposed the cap and held firm to it. This according to reports. And the players were telling him, we're not afraid to lose 162 games, man. And when Manfred continued on that path, Bryce Harper stood up, faced Manfred, walked to the center of the clubhouse and said, if you want to speak about that, you can get the blank out of our clubhouse. Manfred, to his credit, said, I'm not going to get the blank out of here. We're going to talk about this. Nick Castellanos, the former Tiger, current Philly, said it was pretty intense. That's the way Bryce Harper plays the game. That's who he is. Now, look, you and I can both argue that these guys, some of these guys, are going to, they can afford, guys like Bryce Harper can afford to lose 162 games. They can't. Guys like Sawyer Gibson-Long and Reese Olson and Cole Keith, they can't. They can afford to lose some games, but You're not losing 162 games. That's a heavy paycheck every 2 weeks. Hard to make that up. Ask Dylan Dingler if you're ready for the good of the union to miss 162 games. Publicly, he might say yes. Privately, he might say, I'd be in some serious trouble. I might have to get a job. I'm not saying he's got to go to a warehouse and drive a forklift. I'm just saying those are steep demands for people. And there's more of those guys, the Dylan Dinglers, than there are of Bryce Harper, Francisco Lindor, Juan Soto, and Fernando Tatis Jr. Just because we see Subway commercials with Freddie Freeman and Mookie Betts and guys like that doesn't mean that they all have them. Those are the big names. Too often we associate sports, and I'm guilty of it, okay? But we associate sports with the big name, big contract guys. Shohei Ohtani, those guys got more money than they know what to do with. He signed a contract worth $700 million. Yeah, but what about all the guys who don't make that kind of money? Because there's not that many guys who do eclipse that type of salary. Those guys can miss 162 games. And the Phillies got plenty of them. Trey Turner's fine. Nick Castellanos is fine. Bryce Harper's fine. JT Realmuto is fine, right? There's plenty of guys on that Phillies team where they're going, I don't know how I'm going to survive 162. Players Union takes care, but there's a lot of guys in Major League Baseball playing in this one season. There's a lot of guys playing right now, okay? Roughly, there are 800 players. That money might go pretty quickly, okay? It's always baffled me how people with power or position of power can go about things that way against another group that also has power. You're going to challenge them. Okay, go ahead. You know what they're made of. Every athlete I've come in contact with is a type A personality. Maybe not always socially, but when they are on the field of play, when they're in their element, it's a type A personality. They want to win at everything. I don't care if they're playing ping pong, darts, cards, whatever. They want to win. It's about competition. This will be a big competition. And I don't know why Rob Manfred would bring up the word salary cap, knowing that it's a trigger phrase or trigger 2-word solution to what he thinks is MLB problems. You're going to get type A personalities delivering pushback. And that's exactly what he got. And now that this is public, don't kid yourself. He makes a stop in another clubhouse, somebody else will stand their firm ground and say something of the sort. Remember, at the All-Star game in Atlanta, what Tony Clark, the Players Association executive director, said. He thinks a salary cap is institutionalized collusion. He said, we always have been and continue to be ready to talk about ways to improve the industry, and we do a lot of things with the league to do exactly that. You don't need a salary cap to grow the industry. They're pretty firm on their beliefs. Read the room and recognize it. Meyer Hotline, 866-838-4843. Text Sports Radio to 21,000. This hour of X's and Bros on a Tullymore Tuesday is brought to you by Meyer.
Here's an outpatient report surgeries. It gives us to allow the symptoms to stop and urging people to get checked in the hopes of catching any cancer diagnosis early. Yes, the people are correct. Dealing with the same issue affected by the C word that we usually, when we screen it, there is no real life sentence attached to it. But that was it.
It's good stuff from Dan Campbell not too long ago about Hendon Hooker. You don't hear that much these days. You don't really talk much about Lions backup quarterbacks. That used to be all the rage when this team couldn't win. People wanted to see certain guys. I'm tired of watching this guy throw the football. Can you give me this guy instead? Even though you've never seen him throw. You don't hear that about the Jared Goff situation because you don't know what you got behind him. And it scares the hell out of you that this team can win with Jared Goff and without the key member of their team, and most starting quarterbacks is, then you fear like it's not going to happen. The season would be shot. And I think you'd be right. Before we talk more about the Lions, and they're getting ready for the Hall of Fame game on Thursday against the Chargers, which should excite all of us. I would remind you one more thing about the Tigers. Bob Nightingale of USA Today thinks the Tigers are in on Eugenio Suarez, who was hit on the hand last night. In the night, the X-rays were negative, but he's listed day to day for Arizona. This guy's got 36 bombs, which is, you love seeing that since this team needs that power. He's got an on-base plus slugging at 898. That is massive. Okay. And he does it at third base. Why is that important? Well, simple. The Tigers have the fifth worst weighted runs created. I know baseball, it gets a little ridiculous with the number of statistics that baseball uses. The nuances drive you crazy. I don't blame you. All right. It can drive even people who love the game nuts. But just so you're aware, weighted runs created plus adjusts the number of runs that you create to the ballpark in which you play. Okay. 100 is the league average. 150 would be 50% above league average. Okay. The Tigers have that, weighted runs created plus at 79, well below league average. All right. There you go. Suarez makes a ton of sense there. Also understanding that all your fears from the first half have, at least so far, and maybe it's not a big enough sample size for you, so if you don't want to buy into it, I would completely understand. When you have certain guys like Zach McKinstry and Javier Baez and Dylan Dingler taking a little bit longer to find their first half groove here in the second half, Dingler looked pretty good last night, 3 for 4, then it makes you wonder just a little bit. So you need to see a little bit more of it. When you've got a guy like Eugenio Suarez, again, who's got, 36 bombs, and he's got this type of OPS, and he's got the numbers that he's been able to put together, it makes a lot of sense. Would you take him over a Zach McKinstry? Look, middle of the lineup. I want you to think about it, where he would fit and how much it would benefit everybody else in that lineup. This guy he strikes out a lot. So I got a text from a buddy of mine last night talking about Riley Green and his strikeouts. Why in the world don't the Tigers do something about Riley Green and his uppercut swing? I think is what he texted me. And he's a huge Tigers fan. He works in our business, in the media, in a different capacity, but he's sharp. He knows what he's talking about. Sometimes he can be a little too emotional. Can't we all? Absolutely. We all think things can be easily fixed, and that's not always the case, right? If you look at it, Riley Green is unfortunately going to set some records for number of strikeouts, franchise records, which is too bad. It kind of overshadows, what he's been able to do. But if people are telling me they're concerned about that, I would say me too. When you've got 100, what he's got 144 strikeouts and 110 hits, 144 strikeouts. That's tough to swallow. Spencer Torkelson's got 104 strikeouts and he's got 88 hits. That's not a good ratio. I've said it time and time again, though, folks. We nationally, people don't seem to care too much about strikeouts. This is not the George Kell era, for crying out loud. It's not the Tony Gwynn era. We are more accepting of strikeouts than ever before. Maybe it's because Aaron Judge had 171 strikeouts last year, but Riley Green leads the way. Look, James Wood was an all-star. He's in the home run derby. He's second in the league in strikeouts with 134. The Yankees just traded for Ryan McMahon. He's got 131 strikeouts. Kyle Schwarber's got 36 bombs. Woohoo! He also got 125 strikeouts. So the acceptance of that statistic seems to be universal, unless the guy's not coming through in certain situations. Can you overlook a 271 hitter with 25 bombs right now, even though he leads the league in strikeouts? Suarez strikes out a lot, just so you know. I mean, historically, maybe not quite as much this year. 115. He struck out 115 times this year. That would be second on the Tigers, obviously. But he also leads the league in RBIs with 87. And as I mentioned before, he's got 36 homers. It is the third time. Actually, it's the second time in his career he's had 36 or more. He had 49 earlier in his career back in 2019. In 2019, he struck out a league high 189 times. He has led the league in strikeouts 3 times in his career. He did it in 2019. He did it in 2022 with 196 in Seattle. And he did it the following year in 2023 when he struck out 214 times. And by the way, they didn't rest him. They didn't sit him down. He played all 162 games. He had 22 home runs that year. So my friend texted me last night, and he's so pissed off. He can't get over why not sit down Riley Green. The strikeouts are ridiculous, and so on and so forth. I wanted to say, dude, do you want them to acquire Eugenio Suarez? His response would be right away, absolutely. Do you know that it wasn't long ago he had fewer home runs than Riley Green has right now, but he led the league in strikeouts, and yet he played every single game. So in Seattle, they chose to ride it out. If he's acquired, and he's not a great third baseman, defensively, he's not great by any stretch. So he's being brought here for one reason and one reason only. It's his offense. And it's his power specifically. There are going to be plenty of times where this dude's in the box and you know he's going to strike out. He has struck out 170 or more times in each of the last 5 seasons. And he's on pace for something similar this year. The fewest he's ever struck out was 67 times, but that was in the COVID-shortened 2020 season. He struck out 67 times in 57 games. So just keep it in perspective. It's not that I don't want him to make the move. I've said, absolutely. Just understand what you're getting. That's all I ask people to do. Expectations. This always goes back to, what are your expectations? My expectations, if indeed, and Bob Nightingale of USA Today basically writes, the Tigers hope that he doesn't leave with Arizona after this series. Understand what you're getting is a power guy, but a strikeout guy too. This hour is brought to you by Meyer on a Tullymore Tuesday. We're back to talk football on the other side on X's and Bros after this. That's really good stuff. That's David Montgomery, chip on his shoulder, proverbial chip on the shoulder, right? I mean, that's kind of the way it works in certain aspects of sports. Certain guys are passed over. Certain guys are not mentioned as prominently, perhaps, as they once were. And David Montgomery fits that billing for right now. And then Dave Montgomery telling anybody who would listen, look, I mean, I'm going to prove myself right. I know who I am at 5'11", 2.25, a battering ram, and a really good compliment with Jahmyr Gibbs. Let's just hope he stays healthy all season long. When he's healthy, undeniably, rock solid. Hasn't been healthy in either the 2 seasons he's been in Detroit. He played 14 games 2 years ago, played 14 games last year. All right. And then Dan Campbell saying, listen, we know exactly who he is. When David Montgomery's saying that, you know this, he's not suggesting that the Lions have forgotten him. He's not suggesting that John Morton is going to make game plans and he's going to be a secondary thought, or that Dan Campbell isn't going to turn and say, let's get number 5 into the game because we need to get 26 a blow. It has nothing to do with that. He is still a major reason for this team's success. Together, the best running back duo in the National Football League. Think about that. The Lions have the best safety combo. They have the best running back combo. And if you look at it this way, based on certain websites, okay, Book It Sports, for example, had this out. The best receiving core, Bengals at number 1, Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, Mike Gesicki at tight end, Andre Asovas as the 3rd wide receiver. The Lions, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Jamison Williams, Tim Patrick, Sam Laporta. I'm not sure Tim Patrick is the 3. He is right now. If Isaac Tesla keeps making catches like he's made recently, you used a 3rd-round pick on him. My son and I had this debate the other day because he was talking about Tim Patrick and how Tim Patrick was a really good player, Dad, and until he got hurt. When he was in Denver, he was a really good player. I said, was he really good, or was he kind of just a guy? I mean, he had over 700 yards twice. He had 50 catches or more twice. Okay. It's a far cry from what he did at Detroit last year, where he had 33 rocks for almost 400 yards. Would you say, does anybody remember Chris Durham? Chris Durham was a wide receiver for the Lions. He was out of Georgia. I think he went undrafted. Could be wrong there, but he might have been. Actually, Seattle used a 4th-round pick on him. That's right. And the Lions acquired him in 2012, and people were, oh, he's only there because of Matthew Stafford. Well, he came in and he had 38 rocks for almost 500 yards, which isn't Tim Patrick. I'm not trying to compare the two, but would you say that was a decent year for a number 3 wide receiver who also played on the same field as Calvin Johnson? Is Tim Patrick capable of more? When Brad Holmes comes out and says about the draft and the wide receivers that Isaac Tesla was his favorite receiver in the draft, you think he's just going to play special teams or something? My guess is he's going to play quite a bit. But anyway, they've got the Lions at 2, and then they've got Tampa at 3, and they've got Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, Emeka Egbuka, and Cade Otton. I would argue, I mean, depending on Egbuka, who was super talented at Ohio State, that trio of receivers, now the tight end for Detroit boosts them. I would say Detroit is the best tight end of that. I would say Cincinnati has the best number 1 wide receiver. I would say Tampa might have the best number 2 receiver, and that Tampa might have the best 3 receiver. So who's got the best receiving core? I don't know. But Detroit's in the discussion in their receiving core. That's complimentary. Their quarterback's in the top 10. There's a lot of positives for Detroit's offense, without question. And I love what David Montgomery said when it's because the media and it's because the national pundits are basically counting on Jahmyr Gibbs. And my guess, it's going to go back to, beginning of last year or a couple of years ago, where they are sharing duties. No one's going to see, unless one of them gets hurt, is going to be the quote-unquote bell cow. So we'll soon find out about that. But I'm glad we have some sound from football coming back, because even though I wanted to save this for Trent, because I know he just can't stand Aaron Rodgers. You may not like him, and I don't like the way he handles all his situations either. And I sure don't like his overall record against the Detroit Lions. It's frustrating as all get out. But you cannot deny that he's a Hall of Fame quarterback. When he retires, most likely after this year, unless he has a hell of a year with Pittsburgh, maybe he'll want to play another year. But you would have to say that he's a Hall of Fame player. Well, another Hall of Fame quarterback in Pittsburgh, Terry Bradshaw, said back in May that when the Steelers were interested in Rodgers, he called it a joke. His words were, "What are you going to do? Bring him in for 1 year? Are you kidding me? That guy needs to stay in California, go somewhere, chew on bark, and whisper to the gods out there." That was on a radio show in Arkansas. Okay, I don't know what the hell he means by chew on bark. Maybe he thinks that's what all Californians do. Although what's interesting about that is I believe his studios are in California when he does the pre and post game show for Fox. Whisper to the gods. Yeah, I mean, California's much different than the Midwest. Let's put it that way. Much different than where Terry Bradshaw is originally from, Louisiana, and where he played, Pittsburgh. So he obviously is not a fan of Aaron Rodgers. I'm not exactly sure why he thinks it's a joke that Pittsburgh brings him in for a year. It's not like that's the first or will be the last time something like this happens. Teams bring in plenty of quarterbacks for a year to give their younger quarterbacks a chance to learn. Now, that is not necessarily the case here in Pittsburgh, but when you don't have one, you search for some type of remedy. And that's obviously what Pittsburgh has done here, right? The Lions don't have to worry about that. They feel good about where they're at with their quarterback, starting quarterback anyway. The Rams probably feel pretty good. Matthew Stafford at 37, a little injured. So Jimmy Garoppolo is going to take some snaps this week. But overall, I mean, would Terry Bradshaw feel better if they threw Will Howard into the mix right away? Or do you think it's better if they sit and learn, because Terry Bradshaw had to sit and learn? Would he feel better about Mason Rudolph? He's not there for 1 year. He's been there before. He's back again. He's the backup. Or would it rather be Skylar Thompson? I'm not sure where Terry Bradshaw, why it's such an issue of bringing in a player for 1 year. The Giants have done it. Not that they've done it with great acclaim, but there's been plenty of teams who've gone out and done something like this. Usually it's teams that are searching, right? Plenty of really good quarterbacks have started as backups. Joe Montana was a backup to Steve DeBerg. Tom Brady was a backup to Drew Bledsoe. Terry Bradshaw was a backup to Terry Henry, I believe. So it's happened, all right? You don't always have to thrust your drafted quarterback into a first-string role right away. It's probably more pressure on teams than ever before to do that with high first-round picks. Cam Ward wins it by default because Will Levis is out for the year with a bad wing. But you're going to have most teams in an ideal situation, unless their quarterback seizes the moment, unless their drafted quarterback is by far and away, and everybody recognizes he's the best guy to go with. He gives us the best chance to win. Players recognize that. They see what's going on. They watch film. They see what's going on in practice. They're talking amongst each other. Man, I can't believe he fit that into that window. All those guys. That's what it was like when Matthew Stafford was drafted by the Lions. It was him or Dante Culpepper. Stafford was just flat out better. And every player knew it. Who gives us the best chance to win? Justin Verlander, Joel Zumaya, in spring training gave the Tigers their best chance to win. That's why Jim Leyland took them north in 2006. And if they didn't, players would have said, what the hell are you doing? I thought you're trying to give us the best chance to win. Those guys give us the best chance to win. The pressure that is on in Pittsburgh, that's pretty continuous, right? Because they have high expectations. Despite 6 Super Bowls, they have high expectations. They're spoiled, and that's okay. We wish they were that. We wish we were that, I should say. Knowing how much pressure there's always pressure, but especially this year on Mike Tomlin, who's got to get postseason wins. You don't think Mike Tomlin's – you think he's just starting a guy for the sake of starting him? Or do you not think he's putting the guy in there who gives him the best chance to win because his ass is on the line on a regular basis? My guess is the latter. Anyway, Terry Bradshaw was not real fired up, as you can tell, by that comment or by the acquisition of Aaron Rodgers. So I told you what he said. Here, Rodgers, who's usually in the past has been rather smug, responded by saying this. And I think this is where you look at a guy, can he change your mind? I don't know. But he recognizes how close a fan base may be to a certain player. Guy wins you the franchise's first 4 Super Bowls, Terry Bradshaw, and those teams, they are held in the highest regard. Chuck Noll, guaranteed if you talk to people in Pittsburgh today, who's the greatest Pittsburgh coach of all time? As much as they may like Bill Cowher, as much as they may like Mike Tomlin, it's Chuck Noll. As much as they may like Ben Roethlisberger as an all-time great, they'll side with Terry Bradshaw. He's got 4 rings. As much as they may love a certain defensive player at a certain position, it's going to be hard to surpass Jack Ham or Jack Lambert or Mean Joe Green or Donnie Shell or Mel Blount and guys like that, if they're old enough to remember, because of what they delivered to that city. Rodgers would be in that discussion in Green Bay, I would anticipate. Anyway, so Rodgers says this. Terry's a legend. He's an absolute legend. He won 4 Super Bowls. He's had a legendary career in the media as well. He said, but Terry, like a lot of people, doesn't know me. So he's got an idea of what he thinks about me based on what I have done. The documentary, what I've said, Darkness Retreat, whatever the hell you want to talk about. I'd love to get to know him on a deeper level. And I feel like if he gave me a chance to get to know him, then we'd have a good friendship, because for me, I have nothing but the utmost amount of respect and deference for what the greats have done, because they laid the foundation for us to be able to play this great game. Maybe we can go chew some bark or whatever the hell he's talking about together. That's a pretty damn mature, professional way to handle that situation. We can complain about certain guys all we want. A guy like Aaron Rodgers draws the ire of many a Lions fan, and for good reason. And Vikings, Bears as well, okay? Because he owns Chicago too. And, you know, all the dating scene, all the things that he said, some of the actions that he's done, and so on and so forth. We have a tendency, I think, to overlook some of the obstacles that he overcame. If we like a guy and he overcomes an injury and comes back sooner than we thought, he's awesome. If we don't like the guy, Aaron Rodgers, who came back from a torn Achilles and wanted to play for the Jets, but it didn't make much sense whatsoever, we gloss over it. We act like sometimes people can't grow. But because we've made our mind up, and I say we as in oftentimes you and me and our friends, we've made our mind up about an individual, it's tough to change our mind about that individual. I don't think an article like this, I don't think quotes like that would change someone like Trent Balley's opinion of Aaron Rodgers. He's got his mind made up. I don't like the guy. He's smug. He's arrogant. Blah, blah. Okay. He could be all of that. And at one point in his career may still be right now. I don't know. Haven't interviewed him in a long time since he was with Green Bay. But I can tell you this, when you say something like that about a guy who just took a shot at you, more than one shot, could you hold back? How defensive would you get? In a situation like that, where somebody is basically laughing at the organization for bringing you on board, not knowing who you are. The only time they've really discussed football or talked to one another is pre-production meetings. When a television crew comes in, they go into Green Bay, they ask for certain people. They're going to ask for the head coach, they're going to ask for the quarterback, they'll ask for a defensive captain, they'll ask for a couple of guys. And they'll sit and they'll chat with you 15, 20 minutes or so. Take some notes, use it for their broadcast. You get a thick folder of recent articles that'll allow you to bring up certain stories in case people in a different part of the country don't read those articles associated with the team you're covering or the players you're covering. But the one-on-one conversations with some of these players is really helpful. It's really insightful. That's the only time Terry Bradshaw and Aaron Rodgers have ever really communicated. I mean, why else would they? I mean, it's not like they have much in common to hang out in the offseason, right? It's not like they're in any movies together or anything like that. It's not like Terry Bradshaw hosts a podcast and Aaron Rodgers has got to be on it. So those are some of the discrepancies, right? The fact that they really don't want to know one another. So Terry Bradshaw is making an assumption based on what he's read and what he's seen on TV, clips, perhaps the Pat McAfee show, some of the negative association with Aaron Rodgers during certain times of the NFL season. It's not like he's throwing players under the bus on a regular basis. It's not like he marches up and down the sidelines, screaming at offensive linemen. It's not like he's disrespected the Pittsburgh uniform just yet. Certain things people haven't liked about him. I got to handle some personal business before I come into camp in Pittsburgh. I'm going to be on vacation before I come into camp at the Jets. That rubs certain people the wrong way. Remember, Terry Bradshaw had a serious problem with John Elway, too. When John Elway was drafted by the Indianapolis Colts, didn't want to sign with him, threatened to go play baseball. Terry Bradshaw basically said to anyone who will listen, let him go play baseball. We don't need him. We're going to be fine without him. I'm sure he's changed his mind on him there. Maybe they've gotten a chance to get to know one another. You might want to do that before you start to express those strong feelings about him as a Pittsburgh Steeler. Our phone number on the Meyer hotline is 866-838-4843. You can text the program Sports Radio to 21,000. This is a Tullymore Tuesday, brought to you by Tullymore Golf. Go to tullymooregolf.com. Make your reservations today for your outing, well, no matter how big or small it is. It's a great place to go. It's a great place for golf, and it's a great place to go have a great weekend or during the week, whatever it may be. And we're brought to you by Meyer this hour. Back with the third and final hour of X's and Bros on the Michigan Sports Network after this. Final hour of the program. Welcome, X's and Bros throughout the state of Michigan. We're brought to you this hour by our friends at Soaring Eagle Casino and Resort. I'm Matt Shepard. John Ilka is our producer. John, are you a big basketball fan by chance? You like NBA, college basketball? Okay. Do you watch? That's fine. Sure, I get it. Do you watch the WNBA at all? You can be honest. Okay. Did you see what happened last night in a WNBA game? A player lost her wig and they delayed the game. They paused the game because she lost her wig. Well, okay. I mean, it's incredible. It really is. I mean, when you think you've seen just about everything, when you think this league can't go much lower, it was between Seattle and Connecticut, and a player loses her wig and they say, time out. And she goes running to the back locker room to either readjust or take it off altogether. I don't know. I just saw the headlines and I just saw it's amazing. There are also reports, I have not gotten this confirmed yet. There are also reports that suggest somebody was making fun of her and they were ejected from the game. So there was a fan who paid to go and watch and was making fun of her, got ejected. There used to be in the NBA where fans could scream the obscenities. It was just been ridiculous. In just about every single sport, you've seen that. Every single sport, you've got fans going crazy on professional athletes. And yet somebody makes fun of a woman losing her wig and they're going to get ejected from the game. They're not spitting on the floor. They're not throwing things on the floor. They're not using racist comments. They're not using foul language. They're laughing and making fun of her losing her wig. And there you go. Exactly. Yeah. The Mohegan Sun Casino. Right. Absolutely crazy. Anyway, interesting too, I suppose, for some. In case you missed it, Tigers beat the Diamondbacks 5-1. Andy Ibanez, who was recently called up, 2 for 4, homer and a double. Dylan Dingler, 3 for 4, homer and 2 runs scored. Troy Melton gets his first major league win, tossed 7 scoreless innings, striking out 5, scattering 5 hits. Tonight, it'll be Casey Mize against Arizona. You wouldn't expect Eugenio Suarez to play, considering he got plunked on the hand last night. The x-rays were negative, but you wouldn't expect him in the Arizona lineup. Troy Lovello, their manager, says he is listed day to day. Tigers trade a 19-year-old prospect. His name is Enrique Jimenez to the Twins for Chris Paddock, a starter, and Randy Dobnak, a bullpen guy. Here's what you're going to get. And Paddock will make his debut tomorrow. He's going to start for the Tigers tomorrow. Not that I don't root for him. I root for him big time, okay? I hope he does really well. I hope it's exactly what this team needed. I have my doubts. I thought they needed somebody at the front end of their rotation. They got somebody for the back end of their rotation. I thought they needed an effective strikeout arm at the back end of their bullpen. They've got a guy who has spent all year long, except for one game, in AAA this year with an ERA of 7. That's what they got. He pitched 5 1/3 innings earlier this year for Minnesota and did well. But Dobnik has been horrid for St. Paul. He's been pretty good back in 2020 when he went 6-4 as a starter. It was a hell of a story because he played in Utica. He played independent ball. He was looking to make some money by doing whatever it is guys do, an Uber or delivering something, whatever the case may be. It's kind of a fun story. You root for guys like that. Okay, I can root for guys like that. It doesn't mean I want them on my team in a trade just prior to the trade deadline in a winnable season. That's frustrating for me. Is there another shoe to drop? I sure as hell hope so. I'm not going to judge Scott Harris and the Tigers right now because the trade deadline is Thursday at 4 o'clock. Okay? So with that said, if something doesn't get done by then I'm going to be pretty damn upset. And I would guess you would feel the same, right? This is not the move or the lone move Detroit has to make. This is a move that Detroit has made in preparation for the deadline move. And I said, by the way, 4 o'clock, I meant 6 o'clock. I'm sorry, 6 o'clock Eastern time is the deadline. So the Tigers got to get something done during that period of time. What is it? I wanted a quality starter. I wanted a top 3 rotation guy. I don't know who your 2 and 3 are in your mind. For me, it's Mize and Flaherty by default. I wanted somebody to squeeze in between Skubal and Mize. I wanted somebody at the back end of the bullpen. And I think there is time to get that done. You could still have that. You could still make that happen. Okay? With Reese Olson on the 60-day IL, Paddock takes his place. Fine. Then offensively, with certain guys faltering or not having the types of second half, and it's early in the second half, but still not having the types of second half that they had in the first half, tough to sustain, and knowing their pattern, knowing who they are, knowing how we've defined them, the numbers that have defined them, it didn't bode well anyway. We didn't expect that, did we? I didn't. I don't expect a 230 lifetime hitter to hit 285 in the second half. I think it's unrealistic. Based on his reputation, based on his numbers, based on what he's done in the past, that was my judgment. Right or wrong, that's how I felt. Who can they go out and get? Well, Bob Nightingale, USA Today, has written, Detroit does not want, his words now, and so many, Eugenio Suarez to leave with Arizona before the series is out. In other words, they would love for him to walk across the hall at Comerica Park and join the Tigers clubhouse. I think most people would be 2 thumbs up with that. Dude's got 36 bombs, 898 OPS. Not a great defensive third baseman. Strikes out a lot, but brings in a lot of runs. You'd be all over it. You'd pencil him in at the number 3 hitter, and suddenly it lengthens your lineup. It would be an impressive right-handed hitting lineup. Or just lineup in general. Ryan Sandberg has passed away at the age of 65. The Cubs Hall of Fame second baseman, was the National League MVP in 1984, a 10-time All-Star, 9-time Gold Glove winner, 7-time Silver Slugger. Again, he was 65 years young. Deserves to be in the Hall of Fame. Great player. But as I brought up in the 6 o'clock hour, so is Lou Whitaker. And immediately that's where the comparisons begin with me. This hour is brought to you by Soaring Eagle Casino and Resort. When we come back, one of my pet peeves in sports after this. I want to dive into something. It's a bit of a pet peeve of mine in football and in general as well. But before we do, I always wonder how much is enough. How much is enough for some pitchers, some athletes in general? How much money is enough? Like, why in the world would a guy? Emmanuel Clase is a really good example. All right, this guy's a two-time reliever of the year. 3 straight years he's led the league in, saves. 3 straight years he's been an all-star. In his career, he's made $11.5 million, or will make $11.5 million with the contract that he has right now. This year, he's making $6.5 million. Next year, he's due to make $10 million. And one would guess he would make it. I mean, it's a team option. Why in the world wouldn't they pick it up, right? I mean, the dude's got lights out stuff, and it's amazing what he can do, even though he struggled in the playoffs last year. Okay, yesterday, he was placed on the non-disciplinary paid leave. So he's still getting paid, all right, by Major League Baseball. Why? They are investigating him for sports betting. More guys betting on a second Guardians pitcher to be placed on this type of leave while Major League Baseball investigates their gambling problem. Luis Ortiz was placed on July 3rd in something similar. Clase's only 28 years old. He's been, again, one of the most dominating back-end closers. He was on the trading block for Cleveland, and plenty of teams would have been interested. No question. Forget the ERA, because for closers, you don't look at ERA. You look at WHIP. You look at save opportunities and save chances. All right, 24 for 29 save chances. Okay. Last year, he had a .61 ERA, and he saved 47 of 50 opportunities. So I said, forget the ERA, and then I bring up the ERA, and let me give you the WHIP. The WHIP last year, .659. All right? Last year, .659 with a .61 WHIP, or ERA, I should say. Year before, a 1.1 WHIP, but a higher ERA. This year, a 3.2 ERA and a WHIP of 1.2. Walks, hits per inning pitched. For a reliever, really important. He has led the league. He won't lead it this year, but at the time of his suspension, he was leading the league 4 straight years with games finished. He's the key guy at the back end of the bullpen. It's cutter from him. He's a bad dude. But remember, in 2020, I shouldn't say remember. You probably don't remember. In 2020, he didn't play because of a PED suspension. Now he's having his season cut short because of a gambling investigation. What does that do to his trade value? Shoots it right down the toilet. Why do players, and I know there's going to be a lot of people out there who are going to complain about baseball and professional sports in general for getting into bed with gambling sites. Hell, look at the networks, the regional networks that are associated with teams. FanDuel. All right? They're not forcing players to gamble. They want you involved. They've got you on your phone and placing bets on a regular basis, both at the ballpark or at stadiums or arenas, whatever, and at home. Didn't expect players. They probably didn't expect players to get so intensely involved as well. And yet it's happened. So it screws Cleveland for sure. And it's interesting because they just used him the other day. Stephen Vogt, they knew that this investigation was about to hit. And they still were using him on a regular basis. Like so much is made of Pete Rose, right? And rightfully so. When you walk through those doors in any clubhouse in Major League Baseball, I don't care where you are, what stadium you're at, I don't care whatever team you're covering, it has the same verbiage. It's a placard that tells players you are not allowed to bet on baseball. The 1919 Black Sox did it. White Sox, they called the Black Sox. Pete Rose, right? Shohei Otani's interpreter, right? Stole from him, sentenced to 57 months in prison. Okay. And now you've got Ortiz, you've got Class A. There's a lot of problems associated with sports and gambling. Jameson Williams wasn't long ago where he was suspended in the NFL. Do you believe that these gambling sites should be off limits in sports in general? Or is this strictly players and their inability to control a way to a fast buck? If there's so much money to be made on something, let's say Class A takes them out, and there's big money on him throwing a first pitch strike or throwing the first pitch ball, contributing to whatever side bet that may be, or giving up a hit. He comes in and his team's up 2. He gives up a hit. Then he gets the rest of them. It's okay. It's just a blip in the screen, right? That's all it was. And yet they win the bet. I don't know what these investigators are looking for. I've seen social media rips on why in the world they would be investigating him. I am just stunned at how many athletes are willing to risk it. And that's why I always ask, how much is enough? Dude stood to make $10 million next year. How much money are you making off sports gambling? If it's you, your team, baseball in general, how much could you possibly be making there? Could it really be that much where you're placing wagers on yourself, on your team, where you're going to eclipse or run the risk of sacrificing $10 million? Come on. That's crazy to think that. But apparently that's the case. The decision making, like we always complain about kids. Are you not thinking it through? I always envision this in these types of situations. I don't know why, but I just do. I envision in these types of situations, how can the adult in the room be telling everybody what you should and shouldn't be doing with your family when you're doing something that is blatantly illegal in your business? You're going to preach to others about things? I don't think so. In the words of Seinfeld, I don't think so. Read an article the other day. Well, you know what one of my pet peeves is? The window in sports. Drives me crazy. Okay? It really does. Drives me up a wall. But it was brought up when it comes to the Detroit Lions. A national website came out, and their headline, "Have the Lions wasted their best Super Bowl chance? How Detroit can still break through despite losing both coordinators." But the word window, the phrase window of opportunity, is decorated in the article. And it frustrates the hell out of me. But we'll talk about it on the other side. The phone number on the Meyer Hotline, 866-838-4843. The text line is Sports Radio 21,000. We're brought to you this hour on this Tullymore Tuesday by Soaring Eagle Casino and Resort. 35 after the hour. Welcome back. If you've listened to this show long enough, you know I don't believe in windows. I think there's been plenty of examples on championship windows staying wide open. You know, you can use whatever phrase you want. You can use window, you can use door, you can use garage door, whatever. And the reason I say that is, I mean, the New England Patriots window in contention from 2009 to 2019. Okay, every year they had a streak where, they're winning divisions, and you win a division more oftentimes than not. Save a sub 500 New Orleans Saints year, and actually they upset the Packers. You're in contention for something. Okay. So New England was in that stretch for a long period of time. Kansas City from 2016 till right now is in that contention. It even was before Patrick Mahomes. It was Alex Smith prior to that. I'm not going to bring up the Rams in the early to late 70s where they dominated the NFC West, or the Vikings dominated the NFC Central from early 70s to late 70s. The two kind of coincided and oftentimes clashed, or the Steelers from the mid to late 70s. The Raiders were really tough to beat back then. The Browns. We've seen plenty. The Packers, in the division. We've seen plenty of instances. And when I say windows, and when anybody suggests windows, my hope is you're suggesting that if the window's closing, that they don't have a chance to compete for a postseason spot. You know as well as I do, if you want to win a championship, you got to reach the postseason first. You don't think they're qualified to win a championship based on what? How many times have you been wrong about someone who reaches the Super Bowl? Be honest. It's okay to admit it. I thought the Lions would get there last year. They didn't. Stunned that Washington did what they did. They got there as a wild card. In order for them to get there, they did it. Were you always right about the Giants, led by Eli Manning? Probably not. Unfortunately, a lot of times it comes back to the quarterback. I can't stand that whole belief that, the window is now. That's what somebody suggested. Look, it's been since 1957 for the Lions. If you want to believe in the Bobby Lane curse, go right ahead, whatever the case may be. Here's what we do know, that it's been way too long for us to deal with it. CBS Sports came out with an article about the Lions, and it said, have they wasted their best Super Bowl chance? And my immediate thought in reading that part of the headline was it last year or the year before? What do you mean by that? Was it last year when they went 15-2? I think just about everybody, I shouldn't say everybody, I think most people felt like they were the best team in football. Okay, there's a hiccup at home against Tampa. There's a hiccup at home against Buffalo. You go undefeated in your division, and it was the best division in football. Okay? Only division that had 3 playoff contenders. You go undefeated on the road. That sure as hell is not easy. You set franchise records and some NFL records en route to doing that. Most people thought you were the best team in football. Now, maybe they didn't pick you for the Super Bowl, but it was hard to convince people the Lions weren't the best team in football. If you want to get nitpicky, sure, at the end, okay, last few games, last 5 or 6 games, their defense let them down a little bit, too many points scored. Those can cause red flags, but there weren't a whole lot of people expecting Washington to go into Ford Field and beat the Lions. Or was it the year before when they reached the NFC Championship game, dominated the first half of that game on the road, against a San Francisco team that many people prior to thought was going to reach and win the Super Bowl. Staged a comeback and got it done. And then lost to the Chiefs. Which was it? You're trying to tell me, based on that headline, that this team had a 2-year window when you've got a roster chock full of young yet experienced, uber talented players. You and I could name, of their 22 starters, you're probably pretty damn happy with about 18 of them. Play the game. Penei Sewell, without a doubt. Jared Goff, absolutely. Jahmyr Gibbs, you bet. Sam Laporta, right on. Amon-Ra St. Brown, hell yeah. Jamison Williams, you bet. Taylor Decker, come on, for sure. There's 7 just on the offense. Defense, Aiden Hutchinson, yep. Aleem McNeil when he's healthy, okay. Absolutely. Jack Campbell, Alex Anzalone, DJ Reed, Brian Branch, Kirby Joseph. There's 14 right there. Who am I missing? I'm missing a defensive end. And who knows about the interior on the offense? And maybe the third wide receiver. How many other threes do you want out there? So give me some wiggle room. We're talking about 4 guys or so. You may be thrilled with Tate Ratledge when all is said and done. We're just not sure about him. Christian Mahogany. Graham Glasgow, you think is serviceable. You'd probably like an upgrade. But I think 18 is pretty close to it. And none of those guys are super old, right? I mean, Taylor Decker is getting a little bit older. Goff's 30. I don't know what you consider old. These guys are the fixture of this team. They are the staples, the core, the identity, everything you would want. These are the guys you want. I don't understand how you think just because they missed an opportunity 2 years ago, had a home field and just turned it over too often last year, that suddenly it's blown. That's it. And I think what happens is, from a national perspective, maybe from a local perspective too, we take a deep breath and we're thinking to ourselves, you know what? Because this team hasn't been there before, they don't know what it takes. And I would remind you that Jared Goff has been there before. He does know what it takes. And I would also add, these past 2 years, I mean, how are you supposed to gain the experience? They have gained the experience. We always used to use the example of the Pistons and the Celtics. In the NBA, the Pistons had to get by the Celtics. The Bulls had to get by the Pistons. We always said that. We thought it was linear, that it was a learning curve that, well, once you experience those rough times made you stronger. So we think that's obviously how it plays out. I don't necessarily believe in that, okay? I don't think you necessarily have to lose in order to win at the highest rate. However, if you do subscribe to that, then you would say the Lions have learned a couple of really valuable lessons over the last 2 years. The heartbreak you felt has been doubled by what they're feeling. And if that's the case, then that type of heartbreak should motivate them, and those lessons learned should help them as they reach 2025-2026. I'm not sure if that's what most Lions fans are believing, but I don't believe by any stretch they've missed their best opportunity. You know, I truly believe this team, I don't think it's going to go 15-2. I don't think you do either. That schedule is nuts. But you can be better than what you had last year, but not have as many wins. And I say that because I think there are certain things this team is going to get better at throughout the season. I think it may start a little slow at times, I mean, like, you don't expect them to lead the league in scoring, do you? You don't expect them to lead the league in all the different categories that they did a year ago. That would be really hard to do with 3 new members on that offensive line plus a new offensive coordinator. And I'm not trying to blow it out of proportion. I think the coordinators are pretty damn important. But I believe the players are equally, if not more important. So I want to see what Christian Mahogany can do. I want to see what Graham Glasgow does at a certain position, and I want to see what Tate Ratledge is made of as well. So if it's Glasgow at the right guard, he probably feels more comfortable because he doesn't have to pull as much. Left guard, most quarterbacks, friend of mine told me this, and he played in the NFL for a long time. He's like, let's face it, most offenses are right-handed dominant. So when you're rolling, who are you pulling? You're pulling the left guard. You're not pulling the right guard. You're pulling the left guard to get out and add more protection. So that left guard more oftentimes is more mobile, a little bit more athletic. The right guard is a little bit more stout. So if that's the case, you can understand why Graham Glasgow would prefer to play right guard. So you get a left guard pull. If that's Mahogany, great. Let's hope he can handle it. Ratledge, handling the snaps is one thing. Handling the snaps, calling out the signals. I mean, you are the quarterback of the offensive line. Is a young guy like that good enough to handle it? I sure hope so. And so do the Lions. So I don't expect them to have earth-shattering numbers this year. But that doesn't mean that come playoff time, if healthy, they can't be as effective, if not more effective, than the offseason. Here's what some of the things that CBS Sports writes about it. It's a great story with a great ending, yet Detroit made the NFC Championship game in 2023, was on the doorstep of the Super Bowl before a second-half collapse. Last year, 15-2, but again fell short of their Super Bowl dreams. This time, done in by banged-up defense and a nightmarish 5-turnover game in the divisional round. In the NFL Championship, windows open very slowly, but close in the blink of an eye. Campbell, Dan, never won to hide his emotions, had the exact same sentiment after the NFC Championship game. And this is where national members of the media latch onto, and I understand why, because Campbell said this. I told those guys, this may have been our only shot. Do I think that? No. Do I believe that? No. However, I know how hard it is to get here. I'm well aware. And it's going to be twice as hard to get back to this point next year than it was this year. That's the reality. When you say that after a loss, that sticks in people's craw. Not only do players start to wonder it, fans and media think about it all the time. That's the reason for an article like this. It's not because of what Detroit did 2 years ago. It's not as much about what Detroit did last year or what they failed to do. It's more about what their coach said following last year's loss. And then, of course, what do they bring up? They bring up Lions don't have those 2 coordinators with Johnson going to the Bears and Glenn going to the Jets. They also don't have some of their core pieces. Do they have enough to remain a true juggernaut? And if things break right, break through. Well, there it is, a true juggernaut. Can you expect to be a juggernaut without some of those key players? Zeitler, Ragnow specifically, Ali McNeil in the middle, defensive line. Really hard to do that. I don't expect a juggernaut. Therein lies the difference. I don't think they're going to be a juggernaut. I think they're going to win plenty of games. You know, the over-under right now is 10.5. Do you believe that? Would you take the over or would you take the under? It's a good poll question. We might have that next week on the Mitch Lyons Wealth Poll question of the day. I'd probably go with the over, okay? I don't think they're going to win 15 games, but I sure as hell don't think they're going to be limited to 9, okay, or under 10. I would go over. I think they're going to, you know, I hate playing the win-loss game because I want to see what they're like when they break camp, but they're going to be a double-digit win team if they're healthy, all right? Is that enough to win the division? These are things that will kind of play out throughout the season. I think Green Bay's good. I think Minnesota, it's going to be a lot on J.J. McCarthy. Chicago is going to improve. I still think Detroit has the best talent in the division. The entire division plays a tough schedule. You know why? Because they play within the division. When you got to play Green Bay twice and Minnesota twice and Chicago twice, those are really difficult games. You've got 6 games right there against high-end teams. Even though Chicago wasn't great last year, the expectation is that Ben Johnson's going to make that much of a difference. But you're going to have that problem, okay? So I don't think the 15 wins is an automatic, but I sure as hell don't think that that should be the bar either. I think this team is going to suffer some losses, but I think in the end, this team is going to be a division winner. I think they're going to be, as long as they're healthy, I think they're going to be fine in the postseason. I still think they're one of the top 3 or 4 most talented teams in all of football. Nothing has really changed a lot for me. Last year, I thought they were the best team in the NFC, the best team in the NFL. They were going to the Super Bowl, and a lot of it had to do with the guys inside. Now I say they might take a step back, but in the long run, I still think they're going to be okay. I don't think they've missed their chance by any stretch because of the amount of talent this team has and the amount of replenishing talent it is capable of. And the guys who are in charge of drafting and developing these young players, they have my utmost confidence. They know exactly what they're doing. I truly believe that. So I hate it when I see this whole window. Have you missed this opportunity? The championship window's open very slowly, but they close in the blink. First of all, I don't think the championship window opened very slowly for the Lions. I mean, historically, yes. But since Dan Campbell got there and company, no. Brad Holmes, no. Within 3 years, it opened for them. So I don't think that's the case at all. And as far as closing quickly, I think this team can sustain it for a long time because of their young players. I mean, the salary cap's going to play a major factor. But I think they're one of the more brilliant front offices in all the NFL. And that should give us all reason to believe that this team is headed for green pastures this year and for years to come. I want to thank John Ilk for producing our program today. Thank you for your time. We always appreciate it. We're on Monday through Friday from 6 to 9 here on the Michigan Sports Network. And, of course, our sponsors, MitchLionsWealth.com, Meyer, Soaring Eagle Casino and Resort. We were honored to be part of your morning commute, wherever it is you may be listening or watching as we stream live on the various streaming services. We're back with you tomorrow morning, 6 o'clock here on the Michigan Sports Network. Have a great Tuesday, everybody. And if you get a chance, head out to Tullymore. It's a Tullymore Tuesday. Go to TullymoreGolf.com. Make your reservations today. You will not be disappointed. In fact, you will be in awe, so much so that you'll want to go back again and again and make it a ritual. I know my family feels that way. My boys who played there not too long ago want to go back as soon as possible. You will too. Have a great Tuesday, everybody, and we'll talk to you tomorrow.